Recently, my video entitled "The Navy with More Admirals Than Warships" caused a bit of a stir online, where it emerged that the once great Royal Navy was so reduced in size that it has more senior officers of flag rank than actual warships, a truly unthinkable situation even 30 years ago. As Britain continues to be put through a process termed managed decline by generations of politicians, the armed forces have likewise been decimated, until we faced a situation recently with the outbreak of the war in Iran, when Britain was seemingly incapable of dispatching at short notice a single warship to the defense of one of her sovereign bases overseas, this one in Cyprus, recently attacked. So in the interest of clarity, I decided to look closely at the current Royal Navy to determine what state it is in March 2026. The first thing to note is that it is too small. Former senior officers and defense analysts have been banging on about the size of the Royal Navy for decades, as it lacks sufficient ships to be an effective force any longer, and the figures do indeed show this. Currently, the Royal Navy has 63 commissioned ships, but of this number only 25 are really fighting ships, that is, submarines, aircraft carriers, destroyers and frigates. The balance are support, patrol and survey vessels, which though armed are not true fighting warships. Such a small fleet might be sufficient for a small nation engaged only in self-defense, but Britain still has some 15 overseas territories, many of which, like the Falkland Islands, require naval protection. Plus, Britain is of course involved with a variety of defense tasks worldwide, but due to endless defense cuts, the Navy is hard-pressed to fulfill them. So of the fighting ships in 2026, Britain possesses 10 submarines, 2 aircraft carriers, 6 destroyers, and 7 frigates. A decade earlier, in 2016, the situation wasn't much better. 11 submarines, no aircraft carriers, 6 destroyers, and 13 frigates. 20 years ago, in 2006, the fleet had 9 submarines, 3 aircraft carriers, 1 helicopter carrier, 10 destroyers and 13 frigates. And 30 years ago, in 1996, the Royal Navy had 17 submarines, 3 aircraft carriers, 15 destroyers and 22 frigates. And it is generally agreed that the Royal Navy should still be this large, as the defence commitments are basically the same as they were in 1996. So, roughly, the Royal Navy's fighting fleet has been reduced by half in 30 years, but is just as busy. Another issue is redundancy. Ships require regular maintenance and sometimes complete refits or updates that can take years. It means that at any one time, numbers of vessels will be doing nothing, and so you require sufficient vessels to make up this shortfall and still maintain operational commitments. Sadly, as you'll see, a good majority of the current fighting fleet is immobilized, undergoing refit or maintenance, with no ships able to cover these losses. Also, a few months ago, I made a video about the parlous state of Britain's seaborne nuclear deterrent. We operate 4 Vanguard-class ballistic missile submarines, and at any one time, 1 is supposed to be on patrol, 1 is undergoing training, 1 is in refit, and 1 is undergoing trials. We do know that the aging V-boats are requiring more frequent and longer refits and maintenance to stay in service. This of course is common sense. These are highly complex but elderly pieces of machinery. Your car goes the same way after all. In 2023, the oldest boat in the class, HMS Vanguard, was returned to service after a refit lasting 7 years. So between 2016 and 2023, officially only 3 V-boats were doing the work of 4. That must have meant that each patrol was extended from 3 to 4 months, adding enormous strain to crews running submerged for such long periods of time. Currently, HMS Victorious, the second boat in the class, is also in long-term refit from 2023 for at least 3 to 4 years, perhaps longer. HMS Vengeance, the fourth boat, entered a long overhaul period and reactor refueling between March 2012 and February 2016. All this means that the Royal Navy only has 3 V-boats in operation at any one time, not 4 as advertised, with one always out of service in refit at any one time. We can probably also surmise that of the remaining 3, at least one must have had some kind of fault or maintenance issue during these periods. That probably left only 2 operational. Or these elderly boats are in fact going to sea with serious maintenance issues or dangerous faults, simply because the continuous at-sea deterrent has to be maintained somehow. I would hazard a guess that gaps must have occurred in Britain's continuous at-sea deterrent, though I doubt the Ministry of Defence or the government would ever admit such. The state of Britain's inadequate flotilla of fleet submarines is truly shocking. We have 6 Astute-class fleet submarines in the Navy, which is too few, and incredibly, in March 2026, only 1 is operational. Let's examine this situation. HMS Astute is undergoing a midlife re-validation period that will last for years. HMS Ambush has been in long-term maintenance since 2022. HMS Artful has been undergoing regeneration and maintenance since 2023. HMS Audacious has been in refit since 2023. And HMS Agamemnon is undergoing testing and sea trials and won't actually enter full-time service until March 2027. That leaves HMS Anson as the only operational British fleet submarine at this time. 1 active hunter-killer submarine to cover the entire fleet. She is currently out in the Middle East after leaving her base in Western Australia. Which military genius thought it was a good idea to reduce the hunter-killer fleet to just 6 boats? You see the point about redundancy. 5 boats are out of service with nothing to cover them. Moving on to the aircraft carriers, Britain currently has 2 enormous carriers, though insufficient surface vessels to protect them properly. Only 1 is actually operational, HMS Prince of Wales, held at high readiness to sail to support military operations in the Middle East. Though without a protective umbrella of destroyers and frigates, she could very well end up being a £3 billion target. The other one, HMS Queen Elizabeth, is in dry dock at Rosyth in Scotland, undergoing extensive repairs to her extremely temperamental propulsion system. Moving on to destroyers, successive governments have seen fit to think that only 6 destroyers are adequate, which is clearly deranged and incredibly irresponsible. So out of 6 vessels, how many are operational in March 2026? A grand total of 2. HMS Dragon, the vessel recently in the news that was supposed to be sent to Cyprus to protect British interests there, and HMS Duncan. The other 4 are all laid up for one reason or another. The class leader, HMS Daring, is preparing to return to service after an absence of 8 years under refit. HMS Dauntless is entering a 3-month scheduled support period following return from deployment in the Pacific. HMS Diamond is doing likewise after a deployment to the Red Sea. And HMS Defender is at Portsmouth, undergoing a £68 million upkeep and upgrade programme. And what about the frigates, the workhorses of the fleet? Here things have improved slightly. The Royal Navy has a fleet of 7 Type 23 frigates, and in March 2026, 5 are active. 2 are not. HMS Richmond is due to be decommissioned this year after 31 years service with no replacement. And HMS Kent is undergoing deep maintenance at Devonport since 2024. But only 5 operational frigates is still a shockingly low figure. They are all old vessels as well. If we compare today's active fleet with the fleet that retook the Falklands in 1982, the sorry state of the Navy is plain to see. If another Falklands-type crisis was to emerge today, could we deal with it? Probably not. In 1982, the Royal Navy was quite large. Britain at the time had 3 aircraft carriers, 12 destroyers compared to 6 today, and 43 frigates compared to just 7 today. In 1982, the Royal Navy deployed the Falklands Task Force, which was 2 aircraft carriers, 8 destroyers and 16 frigates, plus an assortment of other vessels, and still managed to fulfill its other worldwide obligations. If the Falklands kicked off today, the Royal Navy could, at a stretch, deploy 1 aircraft carrier, 2 destroyers and 5 frigates, but only if it stripped all active vessels from all other duties worldwide. If you look hard enough, you will find that another class of warship is actually doing most of the work in 2026, while the bigger warships remain largely out of action. The River-class offshore patrol vessels. At a little under 2,000 tons each, this class are really corvettes or sloops, the type of small warship that existed in earlier Royal Navy fleets. But they don't have that designation today due to not being armed with anti-aircraft and anti-ship missiles, just guns. Retrofitting these vessels might be a good idea to make them more like little frigates or corvettes to fill out the Navy's pool of warships. Currently, there are 7 vessels in service, and incredibly, all 7 are currently operational, from protecting the seas around Britain to protecting the Falkland Islands and also deploying to the South Pacific. These insufficiently armed vessels are really doing the jobs of frigates and destroyers, which is an alarming indictment of the state of the Royal Navy in 2026. Anyway, there it is in black and white. Check it out for yourself. You will be shocked. A tiny navy with lots of commitments and too few ships and personnel, crippled by decades of political mismanagement, and now barely able to send to sea a single submarine or destroyer, let alone a fleet. It's enough to make you cry. It is said that if you stand beside the grave of Admiral Lord Nelson and listen carefully, you can actually hear him rotating at about 1,500 revolutions a minute. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share. Also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.